The vast emptiness of space was broken by the imposing sight of the Zarkonian fleet. Massive warships, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal, hung in orbit around the small blue-green planet of Tyranno. The Zarkonians, a race of tall, four-armed beings with scaled skin, looked down at the peaceful world with greedy eyes. Commander Vexlor stood on the bridge of his flagship, his lips curled into a sneer. "Is this truly the planet that dares to stand against the might of our alliance?" he asked, his voice filled with mockery. His second-in-command, Zira, pulled up a holographic display of Tyranno's defenses. "Yes, Commander. Our scans show their entire military force consists of barely 1,000,000 soldiers. Their technology is centuries behind ours." Vexler's laughter echoed through the bridge. 1,000,000. We could crush them with 1/10 of our forces. The other Zarkonians joined in, their combined laughter a symphony of arrogance. Down on Tyranno, in the capital city of Lumina, the mood was far from jovial. President Elia of the Terranomes stood before the High Council, her silver skin shimmering with worry. "The Zarkonian fleet has arrived," she announced, her voice steady despite her fear. "They demand our immediate surrender." Gasps and murmurs filled the grand chamber. Councillor Zen, an elder with wispy white hair, spoke up. "But surely they wouldn't attack us. We're a peaceful planet. We have no quarrel with them." Elia shook her head sadly. "They care not for peace, Councillor. They want our resources, our people as slaves. They'd done this to 12 worlds already." "But our army," another councillor protested. "Surely they can protect us." General Thullo, a battle-scarred veteran, stepped forward. "I'm afraid not, councillors. Our forces are brave, but we're vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Against the Zarkonian alliance, we stand little chance." Silence fell over the chamber, heavy with despair. But then, a young Abe burst into the room, his eyes wide with excitement. "Madam President, a message from Earth." Elia's eyes lit up. "Earth? Put it through immediately." A holographic screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a human woman in a military uniform. "President Elia, I'm Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've received your distress call and are prepared to offer assistance." Hope bloomed on every face in the chamber. Earth, the legendary homeworld of humanity, known throughout the galaxy for their incredible military prowess. But Councillor Zen looked confused. "I don't understand. How can Earth help us? They're even further away than the Zarkonians." Admiral Chen smiled. "We've had a covered base on your second moon for the past year, with your government's secret permission. We've been monitoring the Zarkonian advance. A team of our top military advisors is ready to deploy to your planet immediately." Elia stepped forward, her voice filled with gratitude. "We accept your help with utmost thanks, Admiral. But forgive me, how can a small team of advisors stand against the Zarkonian fleet?" The human smile turned enigmatic. "Trust me, Madam President. We humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. We'll turn your small army into a force that will make the Zarkonians regret ever entering your system." As the transmission ended, excited chatter filled the chamber. But General Thillo looked thoughtful. "I've heard stories about human military tactics," he mused. "They say one human soldier is worth 100 of any other species." Up in orbit, blissfully unaware of the changing tide, Commander Vexlor was still gloating. "Send a message to their leaders," he ordered. "Tell them they have one planetary rotation to surrender, or we'll start bombarding their cities." Zira nodded, but then frowned at her console. "Sir, I'm detecting a small ship leaving one of Tyranno's moons. It's heading for the planet's surface." Vexlor waved a dismissive hand. "Probably some scared locals trying to flee. Ignore it. They'll all be our slaves soon enough." He turned back to the viewport, imagining his imminent victory. Little did the Zarkonians know that small ship carried the seeds of their defeat. As it streaked through Tyranno's atmosphere, The human advisors on board prepared to turn the tables on the overconfident invaders. The real battle was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy why they were a force to be reckoned with. As dawn broke over Lumina, the capital city of Toronto, a small Earth ship touched down in a secret hangar. The door hissed open, revealing 5 humans in combat gear. They stepped out, their eyes scanning their surroundings with practiced ease. Colonel Sarah Martinez, the team leader, breathed in the alien air. "Smells like a challenge," she said with a grin. Her second in command, Major Tom Chen, nodded in agreement. President Elia and General Thillo were waiting to greet them. Elia's silver skin shimmered with hope as she approached. "Welcome to Toronto," she said. "We're so grateful for your help." Colonel Martinez shook Elia's hand firmly. "Thank you, Madam President. We're here to make sure your planet stays free." She turned to General Thillo. "General, we need to see your troops immediately." As they walked to the military base, Major Chen briefed the Terranoans on their plan. "We're going to completely reorganize your forces," he explained. "The Zarkonians are expecting an easy fight. We're going to give them hell instead." At the base, the human advisors watched as the Terranoans demonstrated their combat skills. The aliens were fast and agile, but their tactics were outdated and predictable. Lieutenant Emma Wong, the team's tech expert, shook her head. "Their weapons are at least a century behind ours," she muttered to Martinez. Colonel Martinez clapped her hands, gathering everyone's attention. "Listen up," she shouted. "From this moment on, you're no longer just soldiers. You're going to become warriors, ghosts, and nightmares to the enemy." The Terranoans looked confused, but excited. Martinez continued, "We're going to teach you things the Zarkonians have never seen before. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, psychological operations. By the time we're done, you'll be able to take down enemies 10 times your size." Over the next few days, the humans worked tirelessly. They divided the Terranoans into small, elite squads. Each human advisor took charge of training different aspects of warfare. Major Chen taught advanced hand-to-hand combat, showing the 4-armed Terranoans how to use their extra limbs to their advantage. "Use your opponent's strength against them," he instructed, flipping the Terranoan soldier twice his size. Lieutenant Wong introduced them to Earth's latest stealth technology. With these cloaking devices, she explained, activating one and disappearing from view, you'll be invisible to Zarkonian sensors. Sergeant Mike O'Brien, the team's weapons specialist, trained them in using improvised explosives. Sometimes, he said, grinning as he detonated a dummy target, the best weapon is the one you make yourself. And Dr. Aisha Patel, their SIOPS expert, taught them the art of deception. The mind is the greatest weapon, she told them. We'll make the Zarkonians see what we want them to see. Meanwhile, in orbit, Commander Vexlor was growing impatient. Why haven't they surrendered yet? He snarled at Zira. Zira looked nervous. Sir, our sensors are picking up unusual activity on the surface. The Terranoans seem to be reorganizing their forces. Vexlor laughed dismissively. Reorganizing? What good will that do them? They're probably just running around in panic. But Zira wasn't convinced. Sir, I think we should send a scouting party. Something doesn't feel right. Nonsense. Vexlor snapped. We'll crush them when the time comes. Their pathetic army is no match for us, no matter how they organize it. Back on the surface, Colonel Martinez stood with President Elia, watching the transformed Terranoan army run through drills that would have been impossible just days ago. I can't believe how much they've improved, Elia said in awe. Martinez smiled grimly. They're ready. Now it's time for Phase 2 of our plan. She turned to Lieutenant Wong. Start the disinformation campaign. Let's feed the Zarkonians some false intelligence they can't resist. As Wong nodded and hurried off, Martinez looked up at the sky where the Zarkonian ships loomed. Laugh while you can, she murmured. You have no idea what's coming for you. The stage was set. The small army that the aliens had laughed at was about to become their worst nightmare, all thanks to the ingenuity and skill of their human advisors. The real battle was about to begin, and the Zarkonians were in for a rude awakening. As the Terranoan sun set, casting long shadows across the landscape, Lieutenant Emma Wong sat hunched over a complex array of computers. Her fingers flew across the keyboards, eyes darting between multiple screens. "It's time to play some mind games," she muttered with a sly grin. Colonel Martinez stood behind her, watching intently. "What have you got for us, Lieutenant?" Wong's eyes gleamed with mischief. "I've created a false intelligence network that the Zarkonians won't be able to resist. They'll think they've hit the jackpot, but every bit of information is designed to lead them exactly where we want them." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Let's see how overconfident aliens handle a dose of human trickery." Up in orbit, Commander Vexlor was growing restless. It had been days since their ultimatum, and still the Terranoans hadn't surrendered. He paced the bridge of his flagship, all four arms clasped behind his back. Suddenly, Zara called out excitedly, "Commander, we've intercepted a massive data burst from the planet's surface." Vexlor rushed to her console. "What is it? What does it say?" Zara's eyes widened as she scanned the information. "Sir, it's their entire defense plan. Troop movements, weapon cages, command center locations, everything." A wicked grin spread across Vexlor's face. "Those fools. They must have accidentally transmitted their secret plans while trying to communicate with their pathetic allies." He laughed, a sound that sent chills down the spines of his crew. "Prepare the invasion force. Victory will be ours by dawn." Little did the Zarkonians know, every piece of information they'd intercepted was carefully crafted by Wong and her team. The human advisors had laid out an intricate web of deception, and the aliens had walked right into it. Back on Toronto, the newly trained army was putting the final touches on their preparations. Sergeant O'Brien supervised as Terranoan soldiers planted harmless but convincing decoys where the false intelligence suggested weapon caches would be. "Remember," O'Brien instructed, "make it look real, but don't put anything valuable here. When the Zarkonians strike, they'll find nothing but empty boxes and a whole lot of disappointment." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. False command centers were established, staffed by a skeleton crew trained in deception. Holographic projectors, provided by Earth's advanced technology, created illusory troop movements that matched the fake plans perfectly. Dr. Patel worked with a group of Terranoan actors, coaching them on how to play the part of panicked soldiers when the invasion began. "The key is to seem scared, but not too scared," she explained. "We want them to think they're winning, right up until the moment they realize they've lost." As night fell, Colonel Martinez gathered her team and the Terranoan leaders for a final briefing. "The Zarkonians think they know our every move," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But in reality, we're the ones controlling the board. Every step they take will lead them further into our trap." President Elia looked nervous but resolute. "And you're sure this will work? We're risking everything on this plan." Major Chen stepped forward, his face serious. "Madam President, if there's one thing humans excel at, it's turning the tables on overconfident opponents. Trust us, the Zarkonians won't know what hit them." As if on cue, alarms began to blare. General Thelo rushed to a console, his eyes wide. "They're coming. The Zarkonian fleet is beginning its descent." Martinez's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Perfect. Everyone to your positions. Remember, let them think they're winning. Draw them in deep." She turned to Wong. "Lieutenant, initiate Operation Phantom." Wong nodded and began typing furiously. Across Toronto, hidden transmitters came to life, broadcasting a carefully orchestrated symphony of false communications, panicked retreat orders, and misleading battle reports. As the first Zarkonian ships broke through the atmosphere, their sensors ablaze with what they thought was accurate intelligence, Martinez allowed herself a small smile. "Let the game begin," she whispered. The night sky lit up with the fire of descending warships, while on the ground, the small but clever army prepared to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate humanity or its allies. The real battle was about to start, and the Zarkonians had no idea they were charging headlong into one of the greatest military deceptions in galactic history. The night sky over Toronto blazed with the fiery trails of descending Zarkonian ships. Commander Vexlor stood at the helm of his command vessel, a triumphant grin spread across his scaled face. "At last," he growled, "the planet will be ours." As the first wave of Zarkonian troops touched down outside Lumina, they were met with exactly what they expected: chaos and panic. Terranoan soldiers seemed to flee in disarray, abandoning posts and dropping weapons. "Look at them run." A Zarkonian sergeant laughed, his 4 arms brandishing a massive energy rifle. "This will be easier than we thought." But hidden in the shadows, Colonel Martinez watched through high-powered binoculars. She spoke quietly into her comm unit. "All units, hold position. Let them think they've won the first round." The Zarkonians pushed forward, their confidence growing with each step. They'd reached the first weapon cache, listed in the stolen plans, only to find empty crates and useless junk. "Sir," a confused soldier reported to his commander, "the weapons, they're not here." Before the commander could respond, chaos erupted from all sides. The fleeing Terranoans suddenly turned, revealing advanced weaponry hidden beneath holographic disguises. "Cheat." O'Brien's voice crackled over the comms. "Light 'em up, boys." The night exploded with energy blasts and explosions. Zarkonian soldiers, caught completely off guard, scrambled for cover that wasn't there. The empty buildings they thought would provide shelter shimmered and vanished. Nothing more than holograms concealing cleverly disguised pit traps. Up in orbit, Vexlor's triumphant grin faded as panicked reports flooded in. "What's happening down there?" he roared. Zura's fingers flew over her console. "Sir, our forces are under heavy attack. They report impossible tactics. The Terranoans seem to be everywhere and nowhere at once." On the ground, Major Chen led a squad of Terranoan special forces, moving like ghosts through the Zarkonian lines. Their cloaking devices, combined with the 4-armed aliens' natural agility, made them practically invisible. "Remember your training," Chen whispered as they approached a Zarkonian command post. "Use their size against them." In a flash of movement, the Terranoans struck. Chen watched with pride as his students executed perfect takedowns, using the Zarkonians' extra limbs as leverage to flip and disarm them before they could even react. Meanwhile, Dr. Patel's psychological warfare kicked into high gear. Hidden speakers blasted confusing orders in Zarkonian language, sending entire squads marching into ambushes. Holographic projections of monstrous creatures, nightmares pulled from Zarkonian mythology, appeared in the shadows, causing hardened warriors to flee in terror. Lieutenant Wong coordinated it all from a mobile command center, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Diverting their reinforcements to Sector 7, she reported. "They'll be walking right into the minefield." Colonel Martinez nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Excellent. General Thallo, your forces are up. Show them what Toronto is really made of." General Thallo, his silver skin gleaming with sweat and excitement, saluted. He turned to his troops, no longer the ragtag group the Zarkonians had laughed at just days ago. Now they stood tall, confident, armed with human tactics and technology. "For Toronto," Thallo roared, and his soldiers echoed the cry as they charged into battle. The Zarkonians, expecting an easy victory, found themselves trapped in a nightmare. Every move they made seemed to play right into the defenders' hands. Entire battalions disappeared into hidden tunnels, only to emerge behind enemy lines. Weapons malfunctioned, communications scrambled, and the very landscape seemed to shift and change. As dawn broke over the battlefield, The once mighty Zarkonian invasion force was in tatters. Thousands of confused and terrified aliens surrendered, unable to comprehend how their certain victory had turned into such a devastating defeat. Commander Vexlor stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. Half his invasion force was gone, and the other half was in full retreat. "Impossible," he muttered. "How could those primitive weaklings do this?" Zira, her voice shaking, offered a possible explanation. "Sir, there are reports. Some of the prisoners are babbling about demons, creatures that move like shadows and fight like nothing they've ever seen." Vexler's eyes narrowed. Demons, or something else. For the first time since the invasion began, a flicker of doubt crept into his mind. What exactly were they facing down there? As the Zarkonian fleet scrambled to regroup, Colonel Martinez allowed herself a small smile. "Phase 1 complete," she said. "Now, let's show them what we can really do." The battle for Tyranno was far from over, but the first shocking blow had been struck. The small army that the aliens had laughed at had just bloodied the nose of a galactic superpower, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Tyrannoan sun rose over a changed battlefield. Smoke rose from the wreckage of Zarkonian ships, and confused alien soldiers huddled in makeshift camps, now prisoners of war. In the Tyrannoan command center, Colonel Martinez and her team gathered to plan their next move. "We've bloodied their nose," Martine said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Now it's time to break their spirit." Lieutenant Wong pulled up a holographic map of the planet and the space around it. "The Zarkonian fleet is regrouping in high orbit," she reported. "They're probably planning a second wave." Major Chen nodded grimly. "They won't make the same mistakes twice. We need to take the fight to them." Meanwhile, aboard the Zarkonian flagship, Commander Vexlor was in a rage. He smashed a control panel with one of his 4 arms, causing his officers to flinch. "How?" he roared. "How did those primitive weaklings defeat our forces?" Zira, her scales pale with fear, spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, we've interrogated some of the survivors. They speak of invisible warriors, tactics they've never seen before. Some even claim the Tyrannoans could control minds." Vexler's eyes narrowed. Mind control. Invisible warriors. Impossible. But a seed of doubt had been planted in his mind. Back on Tyranno, the human advisors put their next plan into action. Sergeant O'Brien worked with Tyrannoan engineers, modifying their ships with Earth stealth technology. "Remember," O'Brien said as he welded a cloaking device to a Tyrannoan fighter, "the key is to hit them hard and fast. They'll never see you coming." Dr. Patil gathered a group of Tyrannoan pilots, their silver skin shimmering with excitement. "Your mission is not just to fight," she explained, "but to spread fear. Use these," she handed out small devices, "to broadcast messages directly into their ships. Make them believe they're facing something beyond their understanding." As night fell, a fleet of cloaked Tyrannoan ships rose silently into the sky. At the helm of the lead ship, General Thelo felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined taking the fight to the stars. Colonel Martinez's voice crackled over the comm. "Remember your training. You're not just fighters now. You're the nightmare they never saw coming." The Tyrannoan fleet slipped past the Zarkonian defenses undetected. Suddenly, alarms blared across the alien armada as explosions bloomed silently in space. Zarkonian ships spun out of control, their systems scrambled by EMPs the Tyrannoans had never possessed before. Vexlor watched in horror as his fleet fell into chaos. "Where are they?" he screamed. "How are they doing this?" As if in answer, a chilling message echoed through every Zarkonian ship. "We are everywhere and nowhere. Surrender now or face annihilation." The voice, created by Dr. Patel's psychological warfare team, seemed to come from inside the aliens' own minds. Panic spread through the Zarkonian ranks. Hardened warriors broke down, convinced they were facing supernatural forces. Ships began to flee, captains ignoring orders in their desperation to escape. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Wong coordinated the attack from her mobile command center. Terranoan Squadron Alpha, target their communication relays. Beta Squadron, take out their weapons. Let's divide and conquer. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The once mighty Zarkonian fleet, which had laughed at the small Terranoan army, now fled in disarray. As dawn broke, Colonel Martinez stood with President Elia, watching the sky light up with the retreating Zarkonian ships. "I can't believe it," Elia said, her voice filled with awe. "We've won." Martinez smiled, but her eyes remained serious. "We've won the battle, Madam President, but the war isn't over yet." News of the Terranoan victory spread quickly across the galaxy. Other worlds, long oppressed by the Zarkonian alliance, began to rebel. Offers of alliance poured in from distant star systems, all eager to learn the secrets of Terrano's incredible defense. In the following days, as the Terranoans celebrated their victory, Colonel Martinez and her team began preparations for the next phase. The small army that aliens had laughed at was now poised to change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. As she looked out at the cheering crowds, Martinez allowed herself a small smile. "Humanity," she murmured, "always finds a way to surprise the universe." The Zarkonian High Command was in chaos. Reports of their defeat at Terrano had spread across their empire, sparking rebellions on a dozen worlds. In a dimly lit war room, Commander Vexlor faced the stern holographic projections of his superiors. "You promised an easy victory," growled High Admiral Zextra, his four arms crossed in disappointment. "Instead, you bring us the greatest defeat in our history." Vexlor's scales paled, but he stood his ground. "The Terranoans, they're not what we thought. Their tactics, their technology. It's unlike anything we've ever faced." A murmur ran through the assembled holograms. Finally, the eldest of them spoke, his voice crackling with age and fury. "Then we will face it with everything we have. Vexlor, you have one last chance. Take our entire reserve fleet. Crush Terrano, or don't bother coming back." Back on Terrano, the mood was cautiously celebratory. In the streets of Lumina, Terranoans danced and cheered, their silver skin glittering in the sunlight. But in the war room, Colonel Martinez and her team knew the fight was far from over. "They'll be back," Martine said, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the planet's defenses. "And this time, they'll throw everything they have at us." President Elia looked worried. "Can we withstand another attack? We've already lost so much." Major Chen stepped forward, his face set with determination. "Madam President, what we lack in numbers, we make up for in skill and strategy. The Zarkonians may have a bigger army, but we have the home field advantage and humanity's greatest weapon, adaptability." Lieutenant Wong's fingers danced over her console. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns. They're gathering a massive fleet, probably their entire reserve force." Sergeant O'Brien grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Good. More targets for us." Dr. Petal looked thoughtful. "Their morale must be at an all-time low. If we can break their spirit early in the battle, we might avoid a prolonged conflict." As they planned, the skies above Terrano began to darken. Thousands of Zarkonian ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, forming a blockade around the planet. Commander Vexlor stood on the bridge of his new flagship, larger and more heavily armed than anything in the previous attack. "This time," he snarled, "no tricks will save them. Commence the bombardment." The space around Terrano lit up with energy weapons and missile trails. But as the attacks neared the planet, they met an invisible barrier. The bombs exploded harmlessly in the upper atmosphere, while energy beams dissipated into nothing. Vexlor's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible. How can they have planetary shields?" "Scan the surface. Find the generator and destroy it." But the scans showed nothing. Unknown to the Zarkonians, the shields were a clever illusion created by thousands of small, cloaked satellites designed by Wong and O'Brien. Each one projected a small force field, overlapping to create an impenetrable defense. As the Zarkonians frantically tried to breach the shield, the Terranoans launched their counterattack. Squadrons of fighters, hidden in orbital debris fields, suddenly sprang to life. Led by General Thello, they tore into the surprised Zarkonian fleet. "Remember," Thello's voice crackled over the comms, "use the tactics the humans taught us. Be unpredictable. Be fierce." The battle raged for hours. Zarkonian ships, designed for overwhelming force, found themselves outmaneuvered by the smaller, more agile Terranoan craft. Confusion spread through the alien ranks as their communications were jammed, their sensors fooled by false readings. In desperation, Vexlor ordered his flagship to lead a final, all-out assault on the planet. "We'll break through their defenses or die trying," he roared. As the massive ship descended towards Terrano, alarms blared on the bridge. "Sir," a panicked officer called out, "we're detecting a new energy signature. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." A blinding light erupted from the planet's surface. A beam of pure energy lanced upwards, slicing through Zarkonian ships like they were made of paper. At its source stood a massive cannon, a secret weapon the humans had helped the Terranoans build. Vexlor stared in awe and terror as his fleet was decimated around him. Suddenly, a realization struck him. A memory of ancient legends whispered across the galaxy. "It can't be," he muttered. "Those tactics, that technology, humans, the Terranoans have allied with humans." As his flagship began to break apart, Vexlor knew the tide of the battle, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy, had turned. The small army they had laughed at now stood poised to overthrow an empire, all because they had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the ability to unite and inspire others to greatness. The sky above Terrano blazed with the fiery remnants of the once mighty Zarkonian fleet. Commander Vexlor's flagship, a twisted hulk of metal, drifted helplessly in orbit. On its bridge, Vexlor stared out at the devastation, his four arms hanging limply at his sides. "It's over," he whispered, more to himself than to his terrified crew. "We've lost." Meanwhile, in luminous Central Square, Terranoans poured into the streets, their silver skin reflecting the lights of victory celebrations. President Elia stood on a balcony overlooking the crowd, tears of joy streaming down her face. Beside her, Colonel Martinez allowed herself a small smile. "You did it," Elia said, turning to the human officer. "You saved our world." Martinez shook her head. "No, Madam President, we gave you the tools, but it was the courage of the Terranoan people that won this day." As the celebrations continued, the human team gathered in their makeshift command center for one last meeting. Lieutenant Wong's fingers danced over her console, bringing up a galactic map filled with blinking lights. "News of our victory is spreading fast," she reported. "We're getting distress calls and alliance requests from at least a dozen worlds previously under Zarkonian control." Major Chen nodded thoughtfully. "The balance of power in the galaxy is shifting. The Zarkonians' reputation for invincibility is shattered." Sergeant O'Brien grinned, slapping Chen on the back. "And it's all thanks to a small, pathetic army and a handful of human advisors. Not bad for a few days' work, eh?" Dr. Patel, however, looked concerned. "We opened Pandora's box," she said quietly. "The galaxy now knows that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. There will be consequences." As if on cue, a communication alert chimed. Wang's eyes widened as she read the incoming message. "It's from Earth Command," she said, looking at Martinez. "They want to speak with you immediately, Colonel." Martinez took a deep breath and accepted the call. The holographic figure of Fleet Admiral Yamamoto appeared, his face stern but with a hint of pride in his eyes. "Colonel Martinez," he said, "congratulations on your victory. But I'm afraid your mission has expanded beyond our initial expectations. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. They're demanding to know more about humanity's role in the galaxy." Martinez straightened her uniform. Understood, sir. What are our orders? Yamamoto's expression softened slightly. For now, continue to assist the Terranones in securing their independence. A diplomatic team is en route to handle negotiations with the Council. But be prepared. Humanity can no longer hide in the shadows. We're about to take our place on the galactic stage. As the transmission ended, Martinez turned to her team. Well, folks, she said with a wry smile, it looks like our little adventure just got a lot bigger. Over the next few days, as Toronto began the process of rebuilding, ships from across the galaxy arrived in orbit. Some came offering alliance and trade, others wary and watchful. The Zarkonian Empire, reeling from its defeat, sued for peace. In a grand ceremony in Lumina's Central Plaza, President Elia signed a Treaty of Independence, officially marking Toronto as a free world. As she put down her pen, she turned to the assembled crowd. Today marks a new chapter in our history, she announced, her voice carried across the planet. We stand free, thanks to our own courage and the help of our human allies. But our journey is just beginning. Together with humanity, we will forge a new path in the galaxy, one of peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. The crowd erupted in cheers. Among them, Martinez and her team watched with a mix of pride and apprehension. They had come to train a small army, but had ended up changing the course of galactic history. As the sun set on Toronto, casting a golden glow over the celebrating crowds, Martinez looked up at the stars. New challenges awaited humanity out there, new allies and potential enemies. The galaxy had laughed at the small army, not realizing humans were in charge. Now, no one would make that mistake again. Well, Martinez said to her team, a glint of excitement in her eyes, who's ready for our next mission? Their answering grins told her all she needed to know. The small army that had shocked the galaxy was ready for whatever the universe might throw at them next. Humanity's grand adventure among the stars had only just begun.